Hey everybody, Eric here with a random Sunday video, just for the hell of it. One of the YouTube channels I watch is Near Mint Condition, and recently the host, the Uncanny Omar, posted a video, top 10 graphic novels that he was thankful for. And these were, for him, very personal things. He would show what the graphic novel was and have an anecdote and why it was very important to him. And of course, most of them had to do with where he was in his life, how it helped him, how it affected him. And so that was kind of inspiring to me to do this video. Mine is not going to be like that. This is just going to be, I think I have 10 things, comic book things, that are like my favorites and things. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I'm going to show you some comic book stuff that's important to me. Now, just a couple of things here. One, twice in my life I have gotten rid of all of the comics that I have, or had. When I went into the Air Force, sold off my entire collection, and then started buying comics again. And then when I moved, the last time I moved, I did not have a lot of time to move because my landlord sold the place I was living to, and the new owners were like, "Get out." So I got rid of my comics then. I didn't have a lot of time and money to move things or store things or anything, so I got rid of my comics. Again, just recently started rebuilding my collection a few years ago, 5 years ago maybe. So, I don't have a lot of old stuff I could have shown you. I don't own anymore. And so I'm working with what I have at the time. Obviously, if I'm showing you stuff, I have it. The second thing is, these are... A lot of what I'm going to show you is representative of what I'm talking about, not necessarily specific. Like, I'm not going to hold up an issue and be like, this one issue is super cool and important. Although that could be the case. Maybe. We'll see. Well, it's a journey. We're going to see what happens. So this is just something I decided to do, show you some comic book stuff. I got a lot of books here. Even though it's 10 things, I'm going to show you a bunch of covers for things. No particular order here, because I just have them stacked over here on the bed, and I'm going to grab things as I go along. But I do think I'll start with what I believe is the oldest. The oldest thing here, but the one that I got most recently. And I'm going to reach over here and grab this. This I just got at my comic book shop. And it was part of a series of collected editions. This is Son of Origins of Marvel Comics. I love that cover. That is my favorite Iron Man armor of all time. So what this is, it reprints the first issues, the origin stories for Iron Man, Daredevil, the X-Men, the Avengers, Silver Surfer, Nick Fury. It just reprints all of these old comics. There's an introduction before each one that tells you what you're about to read and how things came about. So the first book in this series was called Origins of Marvel Comics. Of course, and that had Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Hulk. This is Son of Origins, obviously. And then there was Bring on the Bad Guys, which did the same thing for villains. There was one, I forget what it was called, but it focused on female protagonists from Marvel Comics. But this was originally this was $7, $6.95 back in the day. Let me see. Let's take a quick look. I know you love it when I start flipping through books. Yeah, this was published in 1975. So this was a great way to read the old issues, the origins of, my favorite heroes. I couldn't, at the time, couldn't find Tales of Suspense 39? I'm never exactly sure. I know it's 30-something for Iron Man. Let's see, where is he? We have a cover. Oh, yep, 39. Tales of Suspense 39. Yeah, I wasn't going to find that at the time, so this is a great way to read that and the origins of all these others. So I had the whole series. This is the only one I have now. I can't believe it's not in, mint condition. It's a little worn, but $15, great price for this. These are super expensive on Amazon. So yeah, this is this book, the whole series of these, fantastic. And again, at the time, now it'd be super expensive, but at the time, a great way to read comics that just weren't available to me. So there you go. That's the first one I'm showing you. I don't want to say number one, because as I said, this is in no particular order. Where am I going to set these? I'm going to set these over here. Hopefully, last time I did something like this, we had a collapse. Hopefully, we'll avoid that. Let's go with this one. This is the complete collection of Deathlock the Demolisher. There's a nice illustration on the back. So this has Astonishing Tales, Marvel Spotlight, Marvel Team Up, Marvel 2-in-1, some Captain America. I loved this era of what Marvel was doing. You had this science fiction, this cyborg character that started out in the future and then somehow traveled back to present day. So he's interacting with all the Marvel heroes. And I'm flipping through looking for a particular thing here that hopefully is here. I don't know. Anyway, Deathlock was just a character that I absolutely loved. He's kind of monstrous, and I'm into the... Yeah, here we go. Okay, so I actually have a signed print of this cover from Mike Zeck. He had an online store, and I'm a huge fan of his artwork. Love Deathlock, so I'm right up over there. You can't see it, but I have this hanging on the wall. Anyway, as I said, I just loved this era. This, Deathlock, Killraven. I'm still waiting for a collection of the Killraven books. Marvel, for me anyway, was just doing some really out there kind of stuff. And Deathlock is a character I absolutely love. And so it was great to get this complete collection that's got all those great stories for me. And I think I don't think this collection's very old. I think it's still available. And then there are some other collections of more modern stories with Deathlock. And he was featured in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. Excuse me, I'm going to take a little drink. This episode, not brought to you by Mountain Dew, but, if they want to sponsor me, that'd be fine. There we go. All right. Sticking with that kind of era, the same era as Deathlock, I think. This is another complete collection. This is The Monster of Frankenstein. There you go. Another illustration. This has the complete run of The Monster of Frankenstein. It also has some of the stories from the old black and white magazines. I love the black and white artwork that they had. And then there's, there was the comic itself was in color. And again, they started out by doing an adaptation of the novel. That's the first few issues, is an adaptation of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And then from there, it went on to Frankenstein having his own adventures, carried on, kind of moving through time. And eventually he ends up in the modern Marvel world. The first time I'm flipping around through here. The first time I actually saw Frankenstein in the Marvel Universe was in an issue of Iron Man. There you go. There's Frankenstein and Spider-Man. Again, back then, man, Marvel just, excuse me, it did such great monster stories. I loved what they were doing in the 70s. I actually have the omnibus, the Marvel Horror Omnibus that has uh, the Golem and the Scarecrow and It, the Colossus. I think It is the Colossus, and some other stuff. Just a bunch of their horror comics that hadn't been collected anywhere else, I don't believe. So I really love all this monster stuff, you know. And obviously, if you watch this channel, you know I'm a horror fan. So, yeah, this is just a book that I collected all these issues. That's the thing with both Deathlock and this. I used to have all the individual issues of this, what's in here and what's in here. Again, that was all part of what I sold when I went into the Air Force. All right. So far, that pile is okay. All right. Now I'm just grabbing whatever's on top. There's just a big pile over here, so I'm grabbing what's on top. So this is no particular order. And as I said, these things are just sort of some are representative of greater things. And I think this might be the case here, because this is a trade paperback. This is Dominic Fortune. And this is a reprint of the Max series. But Dominic Fortune I first saw in, here it is. I believe it was Marvel Preview, which was one of the black and white magazines. That was the cover. And the story itself was in black and white, this wonderful black and white artwork. But this was my introduction to Howard Chaykin. I don't know how well you can see that when I hold it up. Dominic Fortune was my introduction to Howard Chaykin. I thought. Turns out he was the original artist on Marvel's original run of Star Wars. But I didn't know that at the time. This I thought was, I love Howard Chaykin's art style. I love his writing style. I think there's satire. There's a lot of politics. But Dominic Fortune is just a character that I love. I was young. I used Dominic Fortune as a pen name. What would you call it when an artist uses a different name? Is it still called a pen name? A pseudonym? I took every art class that I could in high school. A lot of the art that I did is signed Dominic Fortune because I just thought it was a great name. But so this book is representative of a character I love, Dominic Fortune, but also a creator that I love, Howard Chaykin. I've got a bunch of his stuff, American Flag. Excuse me. He did some other stuff for Marvel, stuff for DC, stuff for independent publishers. And so that's why I'm talking about Dominic Fortune. I think I found this one at Half Price Books. But again, I used to have all of these things, all of these issues. All right. I think so far everything's been Marvel. And that's what the majority of this is going to be. And none of it, this isn't like an analysis of the greatest comics of all time. You're not going to find Watchmen here. Mainly because I'm not a huge fan. I want to read it again. Because the first time I read it, I wasn't thrilled with it. Could have been my mood. Sometimes that happens. But anyway, speaking of that, this book. You know what? I'm going to skip this for the moment. I am going to go and grab something else because of storytelling continuity. All right. This is a big, heavy book. This is an omnibus. It is volume 1 of The Hands of Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. So this is a big, fat book. That's all the issues that are in here. And Shang-Chi is one of my favorite characters, comic book characters, of all time. I was very excited to get these. I actually have every volume. It was a great quest because, again, I used to have every single one of these issues. Everything that's in here, everything that's in the other 3 volumes, I had them all. But because of Shang-Chi's father is Fu Manchu. And because of rights, my understanding of this anyway, because of copyright, Marvel couldn't reprint these stories because of the copyright for Fu Manchu. So I don't know if they got special permission just to do it in these omnibus issues or how it works, but this is the first time they've all been reprinted like this. And we'll talk about copyright again shortly. But Shang-Chi just, the storytelling blew me away. The artwork blew me away. In later issues, I mentioned Mike Zeck earlier. He was an artist on it. Should have taken the dust jacket off. Look at that artwork. And I like that it's not just Fu Manchu, but it uses a bunch of characters from the Fu Manchu books from way back when. Sir Dennis Nayland Smith is a main character in this book, and that's the main protagonist against Fu Manchu in the Fu Manchu stories. But this was my... so not just great art, great storytelling, lots of action. You've got Clive Reston, I want to say his name is, who may or may not be the son of James Bond. There's just hints to it. But aside from all of that, this was, I would say, essentially my introduction to the idea of Zen, for lack of a better way to put it, because you had this character who had these amazing martial skills and yet didn't want to use them, and maintained a calm that others, when other people are losing their head, he stays calm. He keeps talking about the games of death and deceit. If I remember correctly, that's how he put it. And he didn't want to be involved, but he did, he couldn't sit idly by and see people get hurt. And he wanted to help his friends. But then there were plenty of times when he would be meditating and he would stop. And there's a lot of thinking going on. And this sort of introduced me at a young age to these concepts that I couldn't necessarily put a name to. I didn't go down a rabbit hole yet. We'll get to that. But, talk about comics I love, influential comics. The Hands of Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. Absolutely one of my favorite series of all time. Set that aside. Now we can get to the other thing I wanted to talk about. And this is one of those that's sort of representative. Because, well, we'll get to that in a second. When I went into the Air Force, as I said, I sold all my comics and got stationed out in California. I found a comic book shop in Santa Maria, and they happened to have the first two issues of a new series. Like issue 2 had just come out. They still had issue 1. I bought both issues, which is a good thing, because if I just had the first issue and read it, I may have never read another issue. I thought the main character was an ass, and I couldn't see me wanting to follow his adventures. But since I had both issues, I read both issues, and the second issue turned me around, because this was a character I'd never heard of, but the writer was putting his own spin on this character who had been around. Unfortunately, I no longer have all the issues, and I had this whole run. The only thing I have right now is Volume 4, trade paperback of the run, and this is, again, one of my favorite comic book characters of all time. This is The Question. This is Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan's Question. And this, man, I love this book. And it was my second introduction to sort of the Zen philosophy. There's a lot of philosophy in this. As I said, the main character, Vic Sage, in the first issue is just an ass. And spoilers, at the end of the first issue, he is shot in the head and dumped in the river, ocean. I don't know. He's dumped in the body of water. Well, it turns out they used a .22. It just flattened against his skull and went around and out the back. It didn't kill him. He's saved. He's taken to Richard Dragon, a martial arts master, and he is trained, and he learns the Zen philosophy. And we learn about it along with him. I keep flipping through this because I thought there was a particular issue in here that I wanted to talk about, but I don't see it. But anyway, one of the great things about the monthly comic, The Question, was that the letters page was always fascinating. A lot of philosophical discussion going on. But Denny O'Neil had a recommended reading list. And there was a lot of philosophy books, as well as some other things, but mainly just nonfiction philosophy. Excuse me. I'm going to have to take another drink. I'm getting parched from all this talk. There we go. Great recommended reading list. For any of you who follow my Reading Remembrances videos, eventually, as I go through the books that I read back in the day, I'm going to be getting to books that I read because they were recommended by Dennis O'Neil in the pages of The Question. Just one of my favorites. Just absolute. I love possibly my favorite DC character. It's a tough call. I love Constantine. Recently have become a huge fan of Red Hood. But The Question is just great. And to bring it back to Watchmen, for those of you who don't know, when Alan Moore was proposing The Watchmen, he wanted to use a bunch of characters that DC had recently acquired from Charlton, including the Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, Phantom Lady, I believe, The Question, and others that I can't remember off the top of my head. DC basically said they had plans for those characters, and so Alan Moore made up his own versions of those characters, and Rorschach is his version of The Question. There is an issue in this run of The Question where Vic Sage is at an airport. He's flying somewhere, and he stops in the gift shop or whatever, the newsstand, and picks up a copy of the collected edition of Watchmen to read on the plane. And then he has a dream that he meets Rorschach. So it's really wild. But yeah, so this is basically, he's the inspiration for Rorschach. Or at least Rorschach is a version of The Question. But absolutely love The Question. And it opened up a lot of doors as far as reading, different authors, different subjects, all sorts of great stuff. That was my phone. It was my text message. But I don't need to check that. It's almost 8 o'clock on Saturday. Who's going to be texting me? Can't be that important. Anyway, let's move on. The next one. This is one of my favorite comic book stories of all time. I absolutely love it. This is the collected edition. Again, that's what we're looking at here. This is Daredevil, Born Again, by Frank Miller, and I believe his name is Dave Mazzucchelli. Not sure how you pronounce it. I absolutely love this story. A story of, for those of you who don't know, without going into too much detail, Kingpin finds out Daredevil's secret identity, destroys his life, and Matt Murdock rises up like a phoenix, except not a crazy planet-killing monstrosity. I just love this kind of redemption story. I'd like to see what happens when the Kingpin tears Matt Murdock's life apart, and when Matt Murdock realizes what's happening to him, and then essentially, much like The Question, He's, I believe he gets stabbed and he's thrown in a cab and dumped in the East River. I'm going to say it's the East River. And then it's about him again coming back, rebuilding his life from scratch. And it is just such a fantastic story. For me, not that I haven't read every single issue of Daredevil there is, but for me, from what I've read, this is the Daredevil story. Absolutely love it. Daredevil Born Again. It's fantastic. So let's toss that one over there. Now, all right, we got 3 piles of things. So we got sort of collections here that I'm going to share. This next one is one of my favorite comics of all time. It came out as a trilogy with decades in between the first part and the last part. So this is, I'm going to show you, I have the 6-volume set. But back, I think when I was in California, is when I found this, the original, and it blew me away. I absolutely love it. Introduced me to Matt Wagner, whom I have tons of stuff that's written, drawn by Matt Wagner. But this is the one. This is Mage, the Hero Discovered. This, it's the original for me. It's not a retelling of the King Arthur story. It's a continuation of the spoilers. He's kind of King Arthur, and the mage is kind of Merlin. She's the lady in the lake. His green baseball bat is Excalibur. There's the mage, so he's essentially Merlin. But I love the artwork, early Matt Wagner style. I absolutely love the story. I've always been a fan of the King Arthur legend. I've read a bunch of different books by different authors that take different perspectives. And this just easily top 5 of my favorite comic book stories. So this is volume 1. It collects the first half of The Hero Discovered. And then we have volume 2. So that's the second half. And I love these. These are new covers. These are relatively new editions. And this has, not to spoil it, but a giant... All right, well, it's not giant. It's just 3 panels. A giant fold-out splash page. I'm not going to show it to you. You should pick these up and read them yourself. But, so that's volume 2. Let's do it this way. Hopefully this won't fall. Then that was followed up sometime later by The Hero Defined. Now here's the weird, this is where we're going to get weird. I don't think I've read this entire story yet. I was buying the individual issues when this came out, and I think it was in the middle of this series that I stopped buying comics. So I never finished it. But this, it's Kevin Matchstick is the main character. This is him a little later in life, and it introduces modern versions of other mythological heroes. More great. I think this guy is Samson. He's Mercury. He's some sort of speedster. And then there's... and Kevin Matchstick meets the woman who will eventually become his wife. And then we have the second part of that, of The Hero Defined. There's his future wife. So at least I have it. Eventually I'm going to read this. I want to reread everything. And then, not long ago, just not too long ago at all, a couple of years at this point maybe, the trilogy was finally completed with Mage, the Hero Denied. I did buy all of the individual issues for this series, and then decided I was going to have a complete set of the trades, so I gave those individual issues to my nephew. But I have read this one, And you can see he's gone bald. He's a little older. He's got kids now. He's trying to stay away from the magic and everything, but he keeps getting pulled in. And then there's the final volume. So that's 6 issues or 6 volumes for the complete Mage Saga. Absolutely one of my favorite stories of all time. Then, all right, we got 2 more little stacks of things left. So let's grab this one. I love alternate realities. I love different versions of things. And so both Marvel and DC have things that they do with alternate versions. DC's got their Elseworlds. And Marvel has What If. So right here I have the first 4 volumes of, what are they calling this? What If Classic, the complete collection. So this is volume 1. The reason I chose this over any of the Elseworlds, and I have a bunch of Elseworlds from DC, Elseworlds, they basically do anything with the character. Yeah, I don't know how else they can just they're putting their characters in any sort of crazy situation. With the classic What Ifs, this is like a butterfly effect kind of thing. They tell you, the Watcher narrates each issue, and he says, on your world, this is how such and such happened. But what if? And they change one little thing, and then we get a completely different, the alternate version of what could happen. So, just for example, the very first issue of What If, right there, was what if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four. So, in the very first issue of Spider-Man, not to be confused with Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, but in Spider-Man number 1, Spider-Man tries to join the Fantastic Four. Does not work. So this is positing what would have happened if he had joined. Let's see, we're just flipping through, finding covers. Let's see, come on. Where's a cover? What if the invaders had stayed together after World War II? That was not bad. What if Rick Jones had become the Hulk? Instead of Bruce Banner. Obviously. There's a fun one. What if the original Marvel bullpen had become the Fantastic Four? And some of these stories have actually happened now in the regular Marvel universe. So, like this one, what if Jane Foster had found the Hammer of Thor? Well, spoilers, Jane Foster became Thor for a while. What if the world knew that Daredevil is blind? Just great stuff. Love these. So this is volume 1 of the complete collection. Then we've got volume 2. And again, I like this one. What if Spider-Man had never become a crime fighter? What would have happened? What if? What do we got? What if Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel were villains? What if Sergeant Fury had fought World War II in outer space? What if the Hulk had become a barbarian? That's kind of Planet Hulk right there. What if Doctor Doom had become a hero? What if the Invisible Girl of the Fantastic Four married the Submariner? I love these alternate tales, alternate takes. Now, here, we're coming around, full circle here. All right, the first volume collects, where is it? What If, 1977 edition, 1 through 12. Fine, seems simple. But this one, volume 2, collects What If, 1977, 13 through 15, and 17 through 23. Where's issue 16, you ask? Well, issue 16 is a What If that deals with Shang-Chi and Fu Manchu. So, that's why I think they had to have like a special deal to make the big omnibus editions and reprint those, because, fortunately for me, that What If issue is in the Master of Kung Fu omnibus. It's in one of the volumes. So it's missing from here, but I do have it in one of the omnibuses. So again, I don't know how the whole copyright thing works. They must have had some sort of special permission just to do that. But anyway, here's volume 3. Got some Wolverine and the Hulk on the cover, some Daredevil and Elektra on the back. Volume 4. You got that. You got Conan versus Thor. Yeah, I really dig the alternate takes on things, and the idea, for the most part, that it's a butterfly effect. They just tweak one little thing. You know, this happened instead of that. And this is how the entire world was changed. I think in the later years, there have been some more recent What If issues. I think they maybe pulled away from that a little bit and got more into an Elseworlds kind of thing where they could just do anything they wanted. I do like the Elseworlds a lot. From DC. That's their alternate thing. But again, I went with What If because of that butterfly effect thing versus like the very first Elseworlds, which I believe this is correct. It was not called an Elseworlds originally. Then they came up with that name, and it was retroactively added to reprints and stuff. But it was Gotham by Gaslight, which has Bruce Wayne as Batman in the Victorian times and going up against Jack the Ripper. Now, that's not a butterfly effect thing. There's nothing that could have happened in the Bruce Wayne's life, the Bruce Wayne that we know. There's nothing that could have happened to change where he's suddenly in Victorian England. So that's what I mean, the difference between like Elseworlds and What If. And I have, like I said, I have a bunch of Elseworlds stuff, a couple of volumes, more than a couple of volumes. And they do sometimes have that sort of butterfly effect. There was one Elseworlds story called The Nail, where essentially Ma and Pa Kent run over a nail and get a flat tire and never make it to pick up the baby Kal-El. And so there's no Superman. Something like that. So we have sort of a world without a Superman. I have the collected edition of that. So anyway, I thought I was done, but nope, we're still going. There's one more thing. A pile of things here. This is, excuse me, the first character that I ever seriously collected. I've been reading comics for as long as I can remember. I know for a fact, I remember in first grade, we went on a trip to Colorado, and I distinctly remember buying a copy of DC's Brave and the Bold, which was like a Batman sort of team-up book. So I was reading comics at least in first grade. I'm sure before that. But it was just pick up a comic here, pick up a comic there. My dad would take me to Eddie's Cigar Store. And this is back when comics were 25 cents. Dad would give me a quarter. I'd just pick a comic off the rack. I always jumped between Marvel and DC. But then I read my first issue of Iron Man. It was issue 101. I believe Frankenstein is in it. And there was just something about it that blew me away. And so I started collecting Iron Man. Seriously collecting Iron Man. I had a bunch of issues of Tales of Suspense, including first appearance of Hawkeye, first appearance of Black Widow. I never had that Tales of Suspense 39, but I had a ton of them. And then I had Iron Man Submariner #1, there was only one issue of that. And then Iron Man #1. Between Iron Man #1 and issue 200, I was only missing 17 issues out of those 200 issues. That's all gone now. Sold them before I went in the Air Force. But thankfully, Marvel has their epic collections. So what I have here, I'm basically rebuying my childhood. This is volume 1. This has Tales of Suspense 39 through 72. Iron Man shared Tales of Suspense with Captain America, so half the issue was an Iron Man story, half the issue was a Captain America story. Look, there's Hawkeye and the Black Widow right there. But, so I have got that one. And then this is volume 2, which has Tales of Suspense 73 through 99, Tales to Astonish 82, because I think that's Submariner, and then Iron Man Submariner number 1, then Iron Man number 1, and a book called Not Brand Ech number 2, which had some stuff in it. But there's that. There's Whiplash. There's Iron Man and Submariner. Volume 3 collects Iron Man 2 through 24. So there you go. There's the Controller. That's the Gladiator. This is absolutely... I love this version of the Iron Man armor. It's always been my favorite. I think it always will be. And then the most recent one is Volume 4, which has Iron Man 25 through 46 and Daredevil number 73, because there's a crossover. But there's that. There's that. I love that armor. The odd thing about these Epic collections is they don't print them in order. So right now, I'm just looking on the back. It lists a bunch of stuff. So available for Iron Man in the Epic collections, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Got those. Then volume 10 is out there. 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Because I guess basically they know what they're going to print in each volume. And they put them out, or they did put them out in, like, they're like, we want to get this storyline out there. I think. I don't know what the hell they're doing. All I know is they're not in order. But I have the first 4. Because, and I had all of this stuff. I loved Iron Man. I don't collect Iron Man anymore. I'm only going to get these Epic collections probably up until around 200. We'll see. I think I want to go as far as the original Armor Wars. So, yeah, that's it. All right, that's the last of it. This has been a really long video. So there you go. I think that's however many, 8 or 10, just comic books that I love, that are important to me. Nothing, not nearly as emotional as what was on the Near Mint Condition video, which if you're into comics, you should check out that channel. Just something I wanted to do. As I said, it's a random Sunday video. There you have it. All right, that's it. I have no conclusion to this. I'm going to have to put all these back on the shelf. Yeah, if you have any comments, questions, corrections, please put them in the comments below. We can talk spoilers in the comments. I don't know what that means. Just post spoiler warning. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to check me out on social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram is EricSmith5757, all lowercase, ERIKSMITH 5757. All right, that's all I got. And until next time, read more books.